Is your practice tired of wrestling with insurance denials, deciphering EOBs, and watching your revenue slip through the cracks? You are not alone. Welcome to The Claim Game, the podcast designed to cut through the confusion and provide you with the best practices for revenue cycle management success. We are Jeremy and Catherine Zug, and we've been with people just like you in the trenches. Each week, we'll break down complex billing processes, share real-world solutions from practices like yours, and ask questions of the game makers and changers of healthcare so you can take control of your revenue. Let's turn those claim denials into deposits and help you return to focusing on patient care. It's time to win the claim game.
Can we start with who you are, where you're located, and how you got into the websites?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Daniel Fava, and I am the owner, founder, creator, CEO, whatever you want to call it, of Private Practice Elevation. And so we are a small website design, development, and SEO agency, and some peripheral services that go along with that, such as copywriting and WordPress support, care plans, stuff like that. So yeah, let's see, how did I get started? I really got started, really comes from my wife and her being the therapist. A lot of the times when I speak to potential clients, a lot of times people think I'm a therapist, or I guess it's just the way I talk, having been married to a therapist for, 16 years now. You know,
Holy
it really
smokes,
really
congrats.
started with her. Yeah, June. We're coming up on 16 years. It's crazy.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, she started, we moved to Atlanta when we got married, you know, and she started the process of getting her licensure. And that was, you know, a long, arduous journey there. And then, you know, she got licensed. And so she was officially in private practice, and she started with a group practice, but it was still, you know, her entity working underneath this group. And so, you know, I used my WordPress knowledge and web design skills to build her first website and, you know, start marketing her and start getting those first clients. And, you know, it grew from there, and, you know, it was always kind of a side project for me. And then I went into the nonprofit space, working for a nonprofit called CARE that's headquartered in Atlanta here. And so worked there for about 5 years. And it was a great experience, great organization, but I always just had this entrepreneurial creator type thing in me. And I was finding myself managing more people and in too many meetings. It was just like, I'm ready to create my own thing. And so, you know, I spent a lot of time figuring out what could that be, and really landed on, well, let's create websites for therapists. So started in 2016 as a freelancer, myself building the websites. And then, you know, since then, just through the seasons, you know, realized that there's a lot of people who can create websites better than I can, and design websites better than I can, and do SEO for therapists better than I can. So, you know, it just kind of grew out of, you know, necessity of wanting to provide better services and better results for our clients. So, you know, now here in 2026, we are a team of about 9. And like I said, we offer website design, development, SEO, website care plans, and now copywriting for therapy websites. So that's kind of sums it up right there.
Yeah, that is a good summary. So you're in Atlanta.
Yep.
I assume the team is all over, right?
Yeah, the team is all over the world. We have a couple folks here in the US, and then developers abroad.
Nice. So you married the therapist. What was your background in, like, digital development, design?
Yeah, my background is really, a BA in fine arts, you know, so I really went to school for, I was always just an artist and a creator, loved to just, create things, you know, and I fell in love with web design in college. It was like, I know this is what I'm going to be doing kind of forever. Was in a band in college, so I have made our first website for our band.
No kidding.
You know, kind of use that
Nice.
as like the training ground of getting familiar with web design and stuff. So yeah, out of college, I was fortunate enough to have a job when I graduated at a marketing agency in Long Island, New York, where I grew up. And so worked there for a few years before a whole crazy story that kind of brought me to Atlanta and being married to my wife.
Nice. I didn't know you grew up on Long Island. Do you ever miss it?
I do. I miss some aspects of it. And then there's aspects that I'm totally fine without. I haven't visited in a while. My parents retired, and they retired to Virginia, which is where my brother is in Northern Virginia. We don't have a lot of family still on Long Island, so we don't get to visit much, unfortunately. I miss some of the food and some of the places that I used to go. I am due for at least a New York City trip. I would love to take my kids to New York City.
Yeah, we've never visited New York City as a couple. It'd be fun to go one of these times, you know?
Yeah,
We love
yeah.
cities. Atlanta also seems very busy. You're like a city guy, I feel like.
I'm a homebody, but like I find
Okay.
myself. I mean, I grew up in Long Island, so like an hour outside of the city. So it is definitely, suburban, but much it's pretty crowded out there. At least when I left, it was getting pretty crowded. And we're just enough outside of Atlanta that 15 minutes we could be downtown and do all the fun stuff. But at the end of the day, I want to be back in my suburban house and in the quiet.
Nice. I love it. So, are the considerations for building a therapist website different than what you've done in the past?
Yeah, I think there's a few key aspects. I mean, at the end of the day, it is sometimes a small to medium or even large business. It's a service-based business. There's probably the more specific stuff really comes around the SEO aspect of things, which we can talk about. There's higher scrutiny that Google places on a therapist website. It goes in this category. We actually just did a whole podcast episode on our podcast about this. The category is your money, your life category. So it's like if you have content on your website that's going to impact someone's health, well-being, mental health, or their financial situation, Google places higher scrutiny on that, especially when you're creating content for SEO and you're providing resources and giving people maybe advice. Google wants to know that this is an expert and this person has the authority to talk about the topics they're talking about. So it's no longer beneficial just to fill your website with just quantity of information. It needs to be quality information. So, I mean, with that question, that's the first thing that really pops into my mind is some of those aspects. And then on sort of like the design front, marketing front, it's all similar, as far as like we're taking information and we're organizing it in such a way that people can digest it easily in our fast-paced, short attention span world, so that people quickly understand, who you work with, what you do, where you're located, and then how to get started, how to take action. So, I mean, some of that is sort of tried and true, age-old design best practices, really.
Yeah, I mean, and is SEO dead, you think, with AI on the scene? Is content marketing dead? Is keywords, all that? How has all that shaped the work that you're doing?
It is not dead. It's just shifted. A lot of what we have done in the last year is really, we've kind of shifted from, it used to be kind of, SEO was kind of like, you check your boxes. You just, I'm going to publish consistently blog posts, make sure keywords are in the right places. Some of that stuff is still helpful and beneficial. But like I said, we need to make sure that everything is organized well so that you do showcase your expertise, your trustworthiness, your authority, your experience, that sort of thing. And so we are making sure that things are, I know we'll talk more about this too, like in the realm of just how you present your services and being in network and all that good stuff. It's got to be really, really clear. Like, so many people, when we review websites, especially therapist websites, they might really love a quote that really kind of sums up what they do. And that's really the first and foremost thing you see on the website. But that quote's not clear about who you help, where you're located, and information about your services. So, we're just making sure that things are really clear. We're improving trust factors on a website to, making sure it's clear. This is how long I've been in practice. I have 15 years of experience and I've worked with, these types of clients and those sorts of signals, just making it really clear and really showcasing that experience and trustworthiness. And as far as keywords go, that's a big thing that I tend to talk about a lot lately is it's not so much about like, I want to rank for anxiety in Atlanta. So I just have one page and it's just that keyword is there 5-6 times, whatever the recommendation is. And that's it. Like it's not so much about ranking for a keyword anymore. Google is really looking at, and AI is looking for websites that have depth of a topic. So that could be your topic, anxiety in therapy in Atlanta, but what are some pieces of content that are all related to that can show up on your website? And your service landing page, if you have one that's all about anxiety therapy in Atlanta, might rank lower than maybe a really in-depth blog post that you have about what to expect from your first anxiety therapy session with an Atlanta therapist, or whatever
Oh, wow.
whatever the title
that makes
is.
sense.
but it's all
Yeah.
connected, and we link those together. When we write that content, we're hyperlinking to the different pages, but we're showing that depth of a topic rather than just one page that's 3,000 words long. So there's a definite shift there, but a lot of what Google has changed is really related to how AI sees websites. So a lot of what we're doing really, it works on both fronts. It's like, let's be as specific as possible in how we're answering the questions that your ideal client may be having. Because Google, the AI snippets or ChatGPT, they want to answer those specific questions. And so if you want to get cited in those places, it's not so much about where you rank, like am I page 1 or page 2, but can you get in that top spot where Google says, oh, this is the number one anxiety therapist in Atlanta, related to a specific question. It could be like you want to be cited in those AI snippets. Does that answer your question?
Right. Because at the end of the day, you still want to reach like your ideal client, right? I mean, it's not just about stroking the AI ego, right? Or whatever the bots are doing to crawl, right? You want to reach people, right?
Yeah. And people with the intent on finding a therapist. That's another thing too, is because, like I
Oh,
said
interesting.
before,
Yeah.
it's not quantity over quality. Like it used to be like, I'm going to publish a blog post every week. I did that for myself when I launched my business in 2020,
Yeah.
2016. I published a blog post every week for 2 years, and I got lots of traffic and got,
Wow.
built my audience that way. And that was great. But especially when it comes to a therapy website, if you're just filling it with information, like, well, anyone can now go to ChatGPT and there's just tons of information, the symptoms of anxiety, history of anxiety therapy, like whatever that is. But people have specific challenges that they're facing, and that's why they're reaching out for a therapist. So like, we really want to grab hold of people who have the intent of looking for a therapist. So that's why I was kind of talking about, a blog post might be what to expect in your first therapy session for anxiety, because that shows specific intent of someone who wants to be working with a therapist in the near future.
Yeah, you're really starting with like the whole customer journey. I mean, it sounds like that's something that you guys think through a lot about. And one of the questions I had for you is like dealing with insurance is eminently complicated. I mean, on the back end, we don't believe it's that complicated with the right orientation and a process and a system and a workflow and all of that. But how does a therapist website answer common insurance questions and maybe reduce the back and forth up front? How can that work?
Yeah. So I think that's kind of back to like what I mentioned earlier, just about clarity. Like I think that your website, a private practice website, can really be thought of as an extension of your admin team, really. And especially if a therapist doesn't understand the process of insurance, then your clients likely don't understand what's going to happen, how it works, all that stuff. So I mean, like if you're looking for like a quick tip or something that you can just do like today, is just make sure that you've got like a really detailed FAQ page, and you can have sections on that FAQ page, and make it easy to find. Like we usually have it in the top menu. It's one of the drop downs right there. And you can have a whole section about insurance, on that FAQ. Like, what networks are we in? How do copays and deductibles work? What's not guaranteed, what's guaranteed, cancellation fees, whatever you can provide, whatever those key questions are, have it right there on that FAQ page. And you can also have like a what to expect section on your website as well. So those first time people who are in that mode of they have the intent or they're looking for a therapist, they're likely also looking at multiple websites. And so clarity is always going to win, especially if you have similar services, sort of similar approach and competition in your area. If you are more clear and the client has a better understanding of what's going to happen and how they can work with you and their insurance, they're likely going to choose you. And so, it's really the goal. We want to be chosen. Having that FAQ page, a what to expect section is helpful. You can even have a section on like a service landing page on each service landing page that goes through an overview of the process. Here's what to expect. Here's how we get started. If you're curious about insurance, learn more about the networks that we're in here, and then you click over to the FAQ that answers all of that. So just being really clear upfront and answering as many questions as possible means that when someone does reach out, you then get to focus, or your intake coordinator, whatever it is, gets to focus on having conversations more about the process, how it's going to work, how we're going to support you, how we're suited the best to help you overcome your challenges rather than spending your time on insurance questions and billing and all that stuff.
Yeah, talk a little bit more about clarity, right? Because I think it's easy to say use clear messaging or make it really clear, but give me a good example. Use the anxiety therapist in Atlanta, for example, right? Would you want to get so specific as, yeah, how specific would you get? How do you get to clarity?
Well, I think in like the realms of insurance is like just making sure that you're not leaving anything to be misunderstood. Like you're answering like those clear questions. So like not just saying like we're in most insurance networks, but being
Yeah.
clear, like
I
here's
see
the
it all the
insurance
time.
we accept, you know. So you're just kind
Yes.
of cutting out some of that
Yeah.
back and forth. Yeah. And just like I'm always just a fan of just like let's just spell it out and be as clear as possible, especially because people have short attention spans. So yeah, we just want to put that like up front. And you could also include a link to that, to that FAQ. Like I said, if you have a page that's about anxiety therapy in Atlanta, or you have a specific
Mm.
blog post, you can also, have just one sentence in there, like, we would love to support you and help you overcome your anxiety. If you're curious about how we work with insurance, you can learn more on our FAQ page here. If not, if you're ready to get started, click here to schedule your free consultation, or fill out the inquiry form, whatever it is, just like spelling it out across the whole website on every page, making it really clear this is what you are to do in order to start working with us. When we design pages, we have those calls to action spaced throughout the page, because people, they get distracted. If they don't know what to do, they won't do it.
Yeah, no, it's true. You really do need to reduce the calorie burn, right? That
Yeah.
people spend on a website. I was at a conference in Madison. It was the WAFCA conference. And there was a really, really large nonprofit agency there. And I was on their website, and they didn't list which insurance companies they're networked with. It was like, call us to see. Is that a good strategy for a website, to not post like what insurances you're in network with, but rather just leave it up to, I don't know if it's curiosity kills the cat or something, but is that the idea there?
I mean, they probably have a reason why they do that. And I mean, I hope they have a reason. And this could come down to, some folks understand, well, if I could just get somebody on the phone, I do well to sort of guide them in the right direction. And so, that is sort of an aspect too, to think about it. And this reminds me of, we had one client that we worked with who, he kept kind of fluctuating, like, do I put my prices on the website? Do I not put my prices on the website?
Oh,
and
great question. What do you think?
He found, I'll kind of share this story and then I can give you my opinion on it. So he found, when we first launched his new website, redesigned his website, we started doing SEO. He was like, I'm getting a ton of inquiries, but these people are just not a good fit for me. And so he was a solo practice. And so for him, his time was really important. And so he's like, I don't need to get on the phone with so many people and answer the same darn question over and over. So, and to find out like, oh, you're too expensive, I can't afford you. He was private pay, so he wasn't insurance, but I think the example still applies. And so he was like, I'm going to put my pricing like right at the top of the FAQ page, and I think on the contact page too, like made it really clear. And so he saw his inquiries come down, which at first could be kind of scary. It depends on the place you're at, the season you're in, and really what are your needs. For him, that was okay. He's like, I'm getting less leads, but the leads I am getting, no one's balking at the price. Everyone is ready to get started. It's more about the service. How do we get started? How can you help? That sort of thing. And so again, back to clarity, being clear. I think it's a good idea to put prices on your website. Some folks might be starting out, and if you're starting out and you're like, I need the experience, I need the clients. Sometimes you're in that season, and I think it's totally okay to leave it up to a little bit of curiosity, like you said, so that you can get people on the phone, and then you can talk more about it and hopefully, convert them on the phone. That gives you really good practice on, how to talk and do those consultations and get those clients to sign up for you. But, once you're in a place where you really understand who you're best suited to help, or who you love working with, the types of clients you really want to reach, if price is part of that factor, then make it really clear and put it on the website. Same thing with the insurance. I make it really clear and put it on the website.
Yeah, we just interviewed somebody. Her name is Danielle Hayes. She sold her practice, but she grew this thing from 3 therapists to 150, all cash pay.
Wow.
In Texas. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
It's like
wow.
That's so many cash pay therapists. Oh yeah, I know. It's just nuts. But I asked her about how they determined that, because they had a sliding scale pricing. And she
Mm-hmm.
said, well, it depended on who they wanted to see. But if you were on a particular therapist profile on their website, they had a slider on
Yeah.
the website, and they had determined the ranges. And they said the
Yeah.
client would slide the price, and then they would submit the inquiry, and that price would come along with the inquiry.
Yeah.
And then that's what they would pay for therapy. And she said that was eminently successful. Have you seen other strategies like that be successful?
Yeah. So I think that sometimes it really does come down to price. So, if you're at
Right.
that scale, you can likely afford to have those different, the sliding scale price points across all the various therapists. I know that's a goal for my wife she's in kind of an affluent area of Atlanta with her practice. And so she's taking on some interns because, they have to turn away some people because of the price. And so, I could see that being really helpful. And I think people want to connect with someone before they go into that therapeutic relationship. I think it's just natural. And so, like, if you have your therapist, your team on the website, having those different ways that people can find that common ground and connection, with them. And so basically coming down to like making sure you have their biography and sort of, a page dedicated to each therapist where they can talk about their approach, their history, the services that they offer, and price could be part of that as well. And that's something that we do with our group practices. We haven't filtered on price, but we do set up like filtering systems like on the website so that, if you have multiple locations, you have different services that each therapist is offering, people are able to click through and say, oh, I want anxiety therapy at this location in Metro Atlanta. And then it's going to show you the different therapists they could work with. And then they can go in. They have a nice welcoming video on those pages. That's helpful, keeps engagement high on the website. And people can really feel like, okay, I can kind of picture what it's going to be like to sit with this therapist. And so, yeah, so having those different ways of kind of filtering your team, I think is really beneficial. And it keeps people engaged with your website, which is helpful for SEO.
Oh, it super does. It's really helpful, right? I mean, yeah, there are, I don't know if it's an encouragement to say that there are big organizations that post price or the
Mm-hmm.
insurances they're network with and those that don't, but
Yeah.
it certainly does. I think people do appreciate the clarity of, am I in the right spot? Or is this
Yeah.
somebody I really want to work with, right? And then it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter from there. We'll get right back to the podcast episode, but first let me ask you a question. Who is the highest paid insurance biller in your practice? If you're the one doing your billing, the answer is you. If you're the practice owner and you're a clinician, you know the drill. You do the hard work, you deliver great services. And then there's this waiting game. There's billing after hours and on weekends and during birthday parties, or you go to the office for a quote unquote quick visit, and then you look up at your clock and all of a sudden you've been there for 3 or 4 hours doing billing. Following up on claims is tedious and it creates a massive bottleneck for your cash flow. And that's exactly why Practice Solutions does billing for practices that take insurance. We take your practice's billing completely off your plate. Our team handles everything from eligibility and benefits to charging cards to posting payments, following up on denials. And we deal with insurance companies every single day so that you can focus on growing the practice. It's time to stop stressing over the billing and getting back to what you do best, which is running your business as best as you can. Head over to practicesol.com today to schedule your free consultation to see if our done for you billing services are right for you. All right, let's get back to today's episode. So
Yeah.
let's talk about SEO a little bit.
Yeah.
How does one in the age of AI do SEO to help insurance-based practices show up for searches in their area or on the generative AI tools?
Yeah. So I know we kind of touched on this a little bit, and it's really back to clarity. Make it clear and make it clear on each page. There's so many websites that, when somebody reaches out to us, they're like, hey, I'm interested in working with you guys for SEO, telling me about their challenges and stuff. And then I look on their website and I cannot determine, where are you located? Like, who would you be working with? Because I doubt you're working with everybody in every state across the country, and so usually when that happens, when I can't find that information, it's probably they're just like an online practice, but not always. And so, that's one of the first things we want to make sure that it's very clear where you're located and how you work. If you work fully online, that's fine. Like, you can still say, like, I am headquartered in Atlanta, but I work with residents of Georgia, California, and New York, wherever you're licensed. You can have that in your footer as just a small piece of text right there. So Google can understand, and AI and ChatGPT and all can understand wherever someone's located. Like, I want to be able to show them this website. Like, it's got to be clear. And if you are fully online, making sure that you have an online therapy page devoted to how that works, frequently asked questions related to online, that sort of thing. And the other piece too is we talked about like the FAQ page. That's always a good place to start. It's just having a really detailed FAQ page that spells out everything you could spell out, really. And then you can go one step deeper on have devoted landing pages for each of your services or specialties on those pages. And that's often like step number one. When someone comes to us and they're like, I don't know why I'm not getting any traffic from Google. Like, you have no specific information for each service you offer, because someone who is looking for anxiety therapy on their own has very different questions than someone who is looking for couples therapy after infidelity. And so you want to make sure that those specialties should be clear. And then on each of those specialty pages, having frequently asked questions, and this could be a section of that page or it can be kind of spread throughout the content, having that in there, because those are those questions that people are likely asking in AI and in Google. And so you can get really specific and really dig down into those specific challenges those clients are facing in those FAQ sections that are on each specialty page. And then as well too, for insurance, kind of, back to what we said, like making sure they're listed and making sure they're listed in multiple places. It can be on the about page. It can be on your contact page as just we're located in Atlanta, Georgia. We serve the entire metro Atlanta area. And then maybe a small piece of text. We're in network with the following insurance companies. Learn more about how we work with insurance. Click here and then you go to the FAQ. It's another thing, like linking like content together helps Google and AI crawl through the website and see all those different pieces of content, so it can see the depth of the topics that you help clients with. Those are just a few things that come to mind. I mean, SEO is it's a deep dark hole.
It's a deep well for sure. Yeah. No, and here's a question that we didn't really talk about. So directories are becoming real popular, right? I mean, you have Simple Practice in their directory, you have Therapy Notes with their directory. Directories seem to be the name of the game these days. Would you link your directory list, or even just take like Blue Cross Blue Shield or Aetna? They all have provider directories.
Yeah.
Would you link those directories on a website? Would you reference them? How does that work?
We recommend listing from the directories to your website, but I don't think you necessarily need to link from your website to the directories, because being on those lists and those directories, it helps you get found. It gets you on the list, but your website is really what gets you chosen. That is the place that you control. You control.
That's a great quote. Say that again.
Tweet that if Twitter was still a thing. X that. What do they say these days? I don't know.
So it's the website. So,
being in network,
how did you even say that?
Or being on a directory gets you on the list, gets you found.
Yeah.
Your website's what gets you chosen. Ultimately, if you are able to clearly say what you do and who it's for and demonstrate your expertise, and oh, by the way, your website should look beautiful and function well and be modern and professional looking, that's what's going to help you get chosen. So I think directories are great. They just gives you another way for someone to find you. But then when they go over to your website and they want to learn more about you, how you work, what's it like to work with you, what's the process, that website is where you really control that interaction, and you start serving them before they even become a client, because you're providing them with clear expectations, clear understanding of whether they're a good fit for what you do and how you can help them.
That's so good, Daniel. No, that's great.
And I mean, it's the same thing too. If like a lot of times people want to jump into SEO or Google ads, which can be helpful. But if your website is not designed well or perform well and is not already converting people, at least at a small level, spending a lot of money and time on some of the other things is not going to necessarily move the needle. So like your website is really, you have so much control over it to really set the stage for what you do and how you speak to your ideal clients and serve them.
Which I think is important, right? Because I think we talk about this a lot internally, that hoping is not a strategy, right? You can often become a prisoner of hope, right? I mean, hope's not a bad thing. I mean, we work with therapists and hope is a big part of the work that they do. But if you are looking for client acquisition, hope is a bad strategy, right?
Yeah.
So what can you control? And the website seems
Yeah.
like it's one that you can really control, right?
Yeah.
And also website, web development, SEO games, what algorithms like or whatever, it is not in the matrix or worldview grid that most therapists have. And so,
Yeah.
and it takes a lot of time to acquire that, right? Like Brent
Yeah.
Stutzman talks a lot about this. Like, how do you show up in AI? You know, your Yelp profile matters and then your Google profile matters. And those two compete all the time with people's eyeballs. And so it sounds like all of this is a big web that constantly shifts, but you talk a lot about why trust and therapist positioning still matter. Talk more about that.
Yeah. And I think that at the end of the day, Google, if you kind of, I just listened to, I don't know if you're familiar with the Acquired podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Is that Hormozy, Alex Hormozy?
I forget the host's name. There's two hosts,
Who is
but
that?
they go through the story of how businesses were created and grown, and it's fascinating to me. I love that stuff. I love the story behind businesses and how things are created. So I recently was listening to, there's 2 episodes about Google and how they got started, and the very foundation and their mission was really to provide the best experience for their customers, you know, and so that has not changed. Like when you look at everything that they've created, they want to get people to the information that's going to serve them best as quickly as possible. And so they've organized information across the world and the internet to make sure that they are getting the answers to their questions or finding the therapist that's best suited to help them, you know. And so a lot of what we need to do, I think, is a good thing, because we want to make sure that we are demonstrating that trust. We're sharing more about our expertise, and it's less of just having a brochure website of here I am, here's my modalities, here's where I'm located, you know, that sort of thing. And so in order to build trust, you know, we have to really focus in on how you work, what you do best, the specific challenges that you help your clients with, and then find a way to really craft that messaging so that we are connecting with people on, and this can be going back to one of your first questions, like how is a therapy website different, is that it's an emotional experience to be looking for a therapist. You know, I mean, people are often in a place of, you know, it could be despair, or they're just stuck, or really, really, really hard stuff, you know. And so there's also an emotional aspect of connecting with somebody and communicating, I understand what you're going through, and here's why, is because I've worked with so many people going through a divorce, you know, and here's how we approach this, you know, and I'm going to be your guide through this journey. And so you're demonstrating that you get it, you're trustworthy because you have the experience. And that's much different than a website that just says, I can help you through your divorce. We'll talk through it, you know, just like very general.
Wow. Yeah.
And then you could even get very, very specific by thinking about what are 5 questions that someone going through a divorce looking for a therapist might ask. And let me write an article on my website for each of those and connect them all together, you know. And so that really demonstrates that trustworthiness and that authority piece, because that's really kind of what it comes down to. It is different from, you know, just looking for a landscaper to mow your lawn. You know, you're just kind of comparing price and maybe reviews, you know, and that's it. But
yeah, it's true.
It's like it's a much deeper connection that's necessary, you know, when you're hiring a therapist.
It definitely does. Yeah. Without a doubt. And I feel like reviews are something we didn't really talk about or explore, but that's a tricky subject for therapists.
Yeah, definitely. You know, because you can't solicit those reviews, and there's ethical parts to that, but at the same time, the fact of the matter is that Google does consider those, especially for service-based businesses. So, you know, some things that people often do in the therapy space is connect with colleagues. You know, put a review on my Google business profile that can maybe talk about just, you know, sort of like a character review, that sort of thing. And sometimes people will do that for, you know, kind of swap reviews, that sort of thing. And then, you know, but you can't stop a client or past client from finding you and leaving a review. Hopefully it's a good one, and that's great. If somebody does show up and their own free will to do that, that's fantastic, and it is helpful. But yeah, it's a little controversial, and you likely don't want to like give somebody a link to your Google review in the middle of a therapy session. That doesn't feel right.
No. Jeez, yeah, that's definitely not recommended. That is not what we're saying on this podcast.
But I know I've heard of some people who on their, you might have a client who's they're ending service with you, you're closing their file, time has gone by, maybe they had a great experience. And maybe at that point, if you have sort of a, PDF or communication you send them when you're done with work, you could say, by the way, if you found value in our service, we'd appreciate a review. It could be as subtle as that. For some folks, that's still just, it doesn't feel right. And that's totally fine.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. All right. So billing is confusing. We know that. We know the website can be sort of a herald, a communicator, teacher. It can be a lot of things to people looking for therapy. How would you recommend structuring a website to reduce billing confusion and set expectations around things like copays, deductibles, benefits, in or out of network? How do you recommend the flow of information work to burn the least amount of calories for people looking for therapy?
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on it kind of throughout our conversation, but I think step one is, like I said, having that FAQ page. It depends on each website. Some folks, especially larger group practices, they might have a lot of menu items, but if you're able to keep that between like 5 and 7 menu items across the top of your website, and one of those can be FAQ right there, so it's easiest to find, that's always helpful because people can see that and get to that information more quickly. And then kind of spreading it throughout and linking to it kind of across the website. If you have maybe a section on, let's say, a service or a specialty landing page where you're talking about, here's the process to get started. And if you're mentioning something about billing or about insurance, if you're curious if we're in network, learn more about how we deal with insurance here, and then send them to that FAQ page, because that can be a lot to put into a service landing page. So kind of keeping it in that space, but making reference to it throughout the website and clicking back over to it. So I'm a big fan of having like a insurance section of the FAQ page where all the insurance related questions are just right there. And so it's really clear.
So smart.
Like spelling it out, kind of getting really nuanced with it, with the process. And think of it too. I kind of think more like linear, like how's this going to work? Like, will you verify that I'm in network? Answer that question. Well, maybe start with which networks are you in, stuff like that. And just really spelling it out on that FAQ page. And then beyond that, kind of standard form is really just having an about page on your website. And most folks, they do like services. You just here's our services, drops down. Those individual pages like we talked about are helpful for SEO and having those services there. Some folks, it really depends on the practice and kind of how you talk about what you do. Some folks could have services, and that might be individual therapy, team therapy, online therapy, couples therapy. And then specialties could be another drop down where you get a little bit more nuanced, such as like EMDR therapy, trauma-informed therapy, stuff like that. And so really depends on kind of how much content you have, how nuanced you really want to get. And then, like we said, FAQ page, contact page, obviously. And we tend to do, just to kind of help with conversions, have a button on that top right of that menu that says schedule a consultation or get started. If your main way of getting people started is to like fill out an intake form, having that call to action really clear in that top menu.
Yeah, it's very smart. One of the things that I would think through, especially being clear on a website, every state is different. Insurance operates slightly differently in every state. And I'm just thinking of Illinois in specific, right? Blue Cross Blue Shield has HMO plans and PPO plans, and you might be credentialed with the PPO plans, but not the HMO plans.
Right.
The best way to know what plan you have is the 3 alphabetical prefix on the card indicates which plan that your client has. So if you know what the 3 letters are that indicate they're an HMO client, and you're not in network with the HMO plan, put that on the website. Say, I cannot see you if you have this. If your card looks like this, I cannot see you. Even though it says Blue Cross Blue Shield and I might be on the directory and my website says I'm in network with Blue Cross Blue Shield, doesn't matter. I can't see you here. Would you recommend in a case like that where you can delineate by plan or in Michigan, it's Blue Care Network versus Blue Cross Blue Shield. Blue Care Network is the HMO side. Blue Cross Blue Shield is the PPO side. Would you recommend referencing like a referral on your website, or would you recommend saying like reach out and we can provide you a referral, a trusted therapist that takes your insurance, something like that?
Yeah, I would likely have people reach out, and then because I think you could learn a little bit more about their needs, and if you have a good referral base, then you can probably make a better recommendation, and this way it keeps your website pretty clear and focused on who you can take and who you can serve. But I think it's totally fine to make mention of that. So again, like your website still serves them where they're at. So it's not like, oh, they're not in network, I can't work with them. Great, I'm still stuck, And so if they find everything else very useful and helpful, like I still want to kind of connect with this practice, it sounds like they can give me a referral. Maybe I'll still reach out because I'm having trouble finding someone. I think that's kind of a beautiful way that the therapy community works, that I've always loved, that you still provide that referral and help the person reaching out to you.
Yeah, it's a very collaborative industry, which is one of the reasons we love being here as well. Mm-hmm. But that requires, that level of clarity requires that the practice knows very intimately how they're credentialed, mm-hmm. which plans they're in network, which plans they're out of network with, what that means even. And so it's really important that we are organized at the credentialing end, because it does impact marketing, it does impact web development, it does impact how people find you, and it will impact whether or not somebody on your website turns into a client or not. And so
absolutely, I
appreciate the language around being clear, but being clear also requires you being clear in your own head about how this thing is structured. And I know that's tough. Is your wife's practice all cash pay, insurance based, or how does that look?
Cash pay. Yeah, she's in.
It's all cash pay. Okay, so no problem there.
Yeah. So a lot of your world, I know through extension of just our clients, really. But I know at times, she's done the process of submitting super bills and stuff like that.
That's a headache. Yeah, it's a total headache.
Yeah.
She doesn't do it. She made that choice. How did she make that choice? I
think it was because of the headache that she had heard about.
Yeah.
So she just decided. She really started as a solo practice, and she never thought that she would build a group practice, but here we are. She's got 4 or 5 clinicians now. But, she started very slow and steady, and so she just wanted to keep it simple, so really focus on cash pay.
Yeah, and the market could support cash pay, which mm-hmm. makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Was that part of the conversation too?
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of where she is and the clients she works with are a lot of young professionals, established people, working in Buckhead, Atlanta is kind of the area where there's a lot of startups, companies, financial, stuff like that.
Yeah, there you go. And I think that that's a really important strategic factor in how you build a website too, right? Like who are you marketing to?
Yeah.
And what's your area like? And
yeah. And as she grew and sort of that became more clear over time, we've redesigned her website a few times to make sure that it really hones in on just like keeping it modern and professional and clean looking, so that her ideal clients, really resonate with it and hopefully convert at a higher rate.
How do you know when you need to redesign a website?
Ooh, that's a whole other podcast right there, Jeremy.
Is it really? Oh, wow. All right. Maybe that's the teaser for the follow-up, but yeah.
I think I did a webinar with Whitney Owens on this. I also did a recent podcast episode on my own podcast about this. I mean, there's a few different factors, and some of them are a little bit more clear than others. Like one could be just like your website is just a pain to update and work with, especially as you grow and start scaling and you have a team, and it's like every time we need to add a new therapist, it takes like so long for us to do this, or nobody knows how to do it. It's a pain in the butt. Other things like it just doesn't work. Like it just doesn't generate clients. Like it could be that it's too slow or it doesn't show up well on mobile screens. There's technical issues, that happen that people can't find what they need to find on the website because there's just too much information. It's not organized well, a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, that's very smart.
Yeah. So I was going to say, like, a redesign project, when we work with somebody, we're thinking kind of holistically, start to finish, of like, how do we sort of tackle some of the challenges that you're facing? And so for some folks, it's just, I want to be off of some platform that I built my website on that I can't edit or optimize well for SEO. And so we bring that over to a WordPress website, and then we're thinking through the design and how people flow through it and all that stuff. So a redesign can kind of help tackle multiple challenges that you might be facing to help you kind of get to that next level.
Oh, that's great. How do people get more of your content or get more of you in their life? Where do people go for that kind of thing?
I was going to say, you can come to Atlanta. You can find us find us at privatepracticeelevation.com. And, that's just where everything is. We do have a podcast, like I mentioned, under the same title. Just search Private Practice Elevation, where we do interviews with folks like yourself, Jeremy. And I've just started doing these little shorter form podcast episodes that I'm excited about that answer specific questions like, when is it time to redesign a website? So
nice.
Lots of great content there. And if you're interested in learning about how we can help you, we do a free 15-minute call, and you can find that on our website to get started right up top there.
No, I love it. What is one or two pieces of advice you'd give to therapists looking to build a website?
I'd say get very clear on who you work with and their challenges. What are the key challenges that you help folks overcome? And don't be afraid to invest in copywriting. I'm kind of on this copywriting kick right now because it really sets the stage and the success of a website. If you work with a great copywriter who's skilled with SEO as well, you're able to balance the SEO strategy side of things and that emotional conversion connection piece we talked about all at the same time. It sets your website up for success. So don't be afraid to invest in copywriting.
I love it. Well, thank you for being here, and thanks for doing the claim game. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was a great conversation.
If you enjoyed today's episode of The Claim Game, please take a moment to leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really helps new listeners to find us. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to The Claim Game on your favorite podcast app. Your feedback means so much to us. We want to provide valuable education about revenue cycle management. So if there's something we didn't cover in our topic that was a burning question for you, please let us know so we can try to get you the information you desire. You can find the links to all resources we mentioned in this episode in the show notes. And if you want to dive deeper into our resources, we have two places you can do that. First, you can go to our blog at practicesol.com/blog, where we have 8 years of educational blogs. If you want to learn more about what Practice Solutions does, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Just go to practicesol.com to learn more and to connect with one of our awesome people on our team. Thanks for listening. We are Jeremy and Catherine Zug, and this is The Claim Game. See you at the game table next time.